The Grumpy Old Sailor. Words by Janice Armstrong. Illustrations by Meilo So. A So & Co production. One ice blue day, a kite light as a tirrick laced and looped, stitching sea to sky. We four danced the shore, leaping and laughing, passing the string. I, Magnus, made that kite, painted the dragon's head, and tied a tail, a trail of ribbons bright. Under the frosty sky, the old shore cottage stirred. Men in boiler suits tottered into our secret house, with boxes piled high. "Watch your step, you handless fools!" barks an old man with a thunderous frown. An old salt sailor washed ashore. He cast a surly glance our way, then closed the door. Like a stormy sea, all froth and spume, he raged, whipping the house into ship shape. The roof tiles filed into rows, glass gleamed, walls beamed bright in the frosty light. The little house straightened up, the gate snip-snapped shut. The next day we saw him sprickling hither and thither, fingers raking the air. A plastic bag, wind-blown bruck, had breached the border between chaos and order, teased and tumbled and landed in the alder. He ranted, yelling at the bag, until an old man, he crumpled, head in hands. John Ross called, "I'll fetch it," running to the gate. "Oh, no, you don't. Clear off," he growled, waving a gnarled fist. Then there was the ball. John Ross kicked it hard, and it soared over toward the sailor's garden. Exploding with wrath, he hurled it back, covered in kale and curses. A full moon, and with owl eyes we went marching in disguise. With helmets and horns and wooden swords, we went singing up to his door. "What shall we do with a grumpy sailor? What shall we do with a grumpy sailor?" Then bang! The door explodes and he roars, "Go, you pack of rogues!" And in a helter-skelter welter of screams, we scarpered. As week rolled over week, we sometimes glimpsed him working, making, scraping, swearing, planing, banging, sanding, sighing, paring, sawing, building something, and we wondered, what? John Ross the Brave said, "A rocket." Vela the Sweet said, "A little house." Ingrid the Strong said, "A tower." But I, Magnus, said, "A boat." Once a whale lay dead on the shore. Tide after tide stripped it white to ribcage and bone. Now a skeleton of sweet-smelling wood curled out of the garden, and the sailor hammered life into the cradle of bones. Flowering out of the frozen ground, a boat blossomed. The dragon's head, a lovely bud of red. I, Magnus, was right. In mountainous clouds a kite climbed. The arrow soared toward the peak, and we skipped, faces uplifted, along the beach. Calamity! The kite kilted down, a flaming arrow aimed at the sailor, upon his ladder. Bullseye! With a howl and a clatter he fell, cursing heaven and hell. Bucket and paint went splatter, and the sailor lay still, his violet eyes wide to the sky, old man lying among daffodils. Would he rise? We held our breaths. At last, slow and stiff, he rose, but did not roar. His power gone, he gazed upon the dragon's head and watched the paint trickle from its coal-black eyes. Then we ran, all but Vela, who waited, silent and still, and later joined us, trailing the kite. The next day, Ingrid saw him limp from house to shed. John Ross said, "The boat was quite a mess." A tear rolled down Vela's cheek. We all felt bad. So when the stars had settled into place, we climbed the garden wall and set to work. I chose the head. I know about dragons, you see. In silence, we painted and cleaned, mixing torchlight colours, following the sailor's lines, and as we worked, we wondered what might lie beneath the polished deck. A chest of gold, or a bag of bones instead. A curtain moved, and in the splinter of light, I thought I saw him watching. Sure enough, the door opened and he stood against the golden light and growled, "Are you coming on deck or not?" All aboard, the boat became the world, and we were travellers from far and famous lands. Hearts in mouths, we followed him down below. What a celebration! What a treasure trove of a life! Myriads of mementos, stacks of souvenirs, filled every nook and cranny. From port to port he led us, Dakar to Djibouti, Magadan to Manila, Ningbo to New York, San Jose to Sydney. The wealth of nations filled each room, a glorious muddle of cultures. And so we came to know our not-so-grumpy sailor. Days were spent rustling and rummaging in boxes and packaging, but mostly listening to a life lived. And what a life! At times we saw him sparkle in youthful vigour, and then the tales would like flotsam drift and he would slip into slumber. The others, smelling salt air, yawned and left, but I, Magnus, stayed and laid a blanket over him. Like otters at play, day rolled after day. Vela, Ingrid and John Ross came less, but I was hungry to hear. I silently mouthed the strange and lovely names and played the stories inside my head. One evening he handed me his telescope. "Keep it," he said, "to gaze upon the world." The morning he left, we saw him push the boat toward the shore. He leaned with all his strength, until gasping he fell among seaweed and shell. We ran to help. Magnus, reached him first. He looked up, his violet eyes gleaming, and in a whisper he said, "It's time for me to go." I felt my eye sting, but smiling, he said, "Nothing to fear. Another adventure, another dream to dream." Together we all began to push. It was strangely light. We only had to lean, and easily it slipped into the glassy water. Aboard, he gave the salute, and began to sing, "What shall we do with a grumpy sailor?" We laughed and waved, and the wind did the rest. I held the telescope to my eye. I had him framed within a circle, and saw him dance a joyful jig, and the dancing lifted him up like crumpled paper unfolding. Amazed I watched as gold seeped through his hair. No old man now, but a sailor in his prime, laughing at the wind and sea, embracing all, bidding farewell to me. I watched until there was nothing left but the dark slate line of the horizon and a tyrrwhit flying overhead. Turning landward once more, I saw the house. The wind sliced through the broken windows. A sheep stood careless in the garden, and I, Magnus, heard Vela cry, "Let's fly the kite."